The Crips versus Bloods War, the street where it began. If you're brave enough to walk these streets, hit that subscribe button, because this story will pull you straight into the blood and blue smoke of South Central LA. The war between the Crips and the Bloods wasn't just a gang rivalry, it was a decades-long battlefield that swallowed entire generations. It started with a gunshot, a single echo through a humid Los Angeles night in 1979. On 83rd Street, near Florence Avenue, police found a Chevy Impala riddled with bullets. Inside, two teenagers, Marcus Lil Fade Daniels and Reggie Cole, both shot at close range. One wore blue, the other red. They were cousins. Detective Harold Gaines arrived minutes later, the flashing red and blue lights bouncing off shattered glass. He'd seen gang violence before, but this one was different. Both boys had been shot from outside the car, execution style. But the placement of the bodies, one slumped against the other, told him this wasn't a random drive-by. It was a message. The Crips had started small, neighborhood protection in the late 1960s. The Bloods formed in response, tired of being targeted. But by the end of the 1970s, the idea of protection was gone. Cocaine money was flowing. Weapons were cheap. Respect was everything. The streets had turned into kingdoms. Every block a border, every insult a declaration of war. Detective Gaines began connecting the dots, tagging corners, names and symbols across the precinct's crime map. He noticed something chilling. Every murder in the past 2 months had occurred within a 4-block radius of a single spot, a closed community center on Avalon Boulevard. Once a safe space for kids, now it was graffiti-tagged, boarded up, and rumored to be a new drug drop. Meanwhile, the news played the same footage on repeat. Mothers crying in front of yellow tape, helicopters circling South LA at night, police scanners screaming with codes that no one wanted to answer. It wasn't just gangs killing gangs anymore. Innocent people were caught in the crossfire. Bus stops, grocery store parking lots, even playgrounds. Inside the police department, frustration was boiling. The city's anti-gang task force was under pressure to fix the war, but no one could agree how. The politicians wanted arrests. The communities wanted peace. The gangs wanted revenge. And in the middle of it all was Gaines, chasing ghosts through alleys painted in red and blue. One night, Gaines received a tip from an informant known only as Spider. He claimed there was a meeting happening between rival sets, Crips and Bloods, at the abandoned Avalon Center. A truce maybe. Or a trap. Gaines went alone. He parked 2 blocks away and walked the rest, his shoes crunching on broken glass. Inside the gym he could hear voices, low, tense, deliberate. He peeked through a crack in the boarded window. Around a candlelit table sat 6 men, 3 from each side, guns visible at their waists. On the wall behind them, a mural of a child holding a basketball was spray-painted over with a crimson B and a blue C, crossing each other out. Then the shouting began. "Y'all can't run this block," one man barked. "We already do," came the reply. The first gunshot shattered the candlelight. Gaines ducked as bullets tore through the walls. Screams echoed through the building as silhouettes fled into the night. By the time backup arrived, only bodies and blood remained. The truce had failed before it even began. But as Gaines scanned the scene, something caught his eye, a folded piece of paper half-soaked in blood, lying beside one of the victims. He opened it carefully. It was a crude map of South Central, with a single word scrawled across the middle in red ink. Unite. He didn't understand it then, but that word would haunt every investigation that followed, because someone out there was trying to stop the war, by starting a bigger one. And the deeper he dug, the more he realized, this wasn't just about colors. It was about control. The money behind the colors. If you're still here, you're already in too deep. Hit that subscribe button before we keep going, because this isn't just about red or blue anymore. This is where the streets start talking and the truth starts bleeding through the cracks. Detective Harold Gaines hadn't slept in 2 days. The word unite kept looping in his head like a bad song. The truce meeting had ended in a massacre, but something about that paper felt too deliberate, like someone wanted the message to be found. He'd seen street graffiti all his life, but this was clean, calculated, organized. He started digging into gang finances, money flow, weapon shipments, bail payments. What he found didn't add up. Crips and Bloods were supposed to be enemies, yet both were buying their weapons from the same underground supplier in Compton, a man named Terrence T-Bone Ward. T-Bone wasn't loyal to any set. He was loyal to the money. When Gaines finally got an informant close to Ward, he uncovered a trail of cash wired through dummy accounts, not gang-affiliated but corporate. Companies tied to community redevelopment projects, city grants, and even private security contracts. Someone on the outside was quietly funding the war. Meanwhile, the violence escalated. Retaliations hit every block. Blue spray paint over red houses, red flags on blue storefronts. But one thing stood out: every major hit happened in neighborhoods marked for redevelopment. Gaines drove past block after block of condemned buildings and half-empty apartments. On the walls, the words "New City" were plastered on construction signs. It wasn't gang tags this time. It was corporate branding. The city was trying to clean up, and someone was using the chaos to clear the streets. Late one night, Gaines met with T-Bone in a dimly lit parking lot behind an auto shop. T-Bone's voice was low, his eyes darting everywhere. "You think these kids are calling the shots?" he said. "They're soldiers, man. That's all. Someone else is paying for this war, someone wearing a suit." Before Gaines could press further, headlights appeared at the end of the alley. 3 black SUVs, windows tinted. T-Bone's face went pale. "They found me," he muttered. He pulled out a gun, but before Gaines could react, the SUVs opened fire. Gaines dove behind a dumpster as glass shattered around him. When the shooting stopped, T-Bone was gone. His body slumped beside the car, blood pooling under the blue light of a nearby street lamp. Police sirens wailed in the distance, but Gaines already knew what would happen: another gang-related incident. Another file marked unsolved. At headquarters, Gaines reviewed surveillance footage from the scene. One of the shooters had stepped briefly into the light, wearing no colors, no tattoos, no gang markings. Just a black suit. A week later, he got an anonymous envelope in his office mail. Inside, a single photograph. It showed a group of city officials and developers standing in front of a construction site. Smiling, shaking hands. Behind them, barely visible, was the same SUV from the shooting. On the back of the photo, someone had written, "Follow the contracts." Gaines did. What he uncovered made his stomach turn. The same developers funding the new city projects were funneling money through shell corporations, and those corporations were linked to gang intermediaries. They weren't trying to stop the gangs. They were using them to destroy property values, buying land cheap, then rebuilding once the violence cleared everyone out. The Crips and Bloods weren't just fighting each other. They were being manipulated by people in boardrooms, by men who'd never stepped foot in South Central but had everything to gain from watching it burn. But the real shock came when Gaines checked the city council records. One name appeared across multiple redevelopment projects: Councilman Richard Coles, a man publicly known for his anti-gang campaigns and peace initiatives. He'd even spoken at T-Bone Ward's funeral. When Gaines confronted him, Coles smiled calmly. "You think you can stop it?" he said. "This isn't a war, detective. It's business. And business doesn't bleed." Before Gaines could respond, Coles leaned in. "You ever wonder why no one survives long enough to tell the truth about this city?" That night, Gaines' house was broken into. Files scattered, photographs burned. The word "Unite" was spray-painted across his kitchen wall, in both red and blue. He realized then that someone else had taken over the movement. A new alliance, Crips and Bloods, not fighting each other anymore but preparing to fight back against the ones controlling them. And they had one message for the city: "You built this war. Now you'll feel it." The streets strike back. By now, the city was burning in silence, not from gunfire but from whispers. Streets once divided by red and blue were now painted the same color: gray. The gangs had vanished from corners and alleys, but their absence wasn't peace, it was strategy. Detective Gaines sat alone in his car overlooking downtown LA. The skyline glowed under a cold dawn, cranes rising where homes once stood. He knew something was coming. Every lead he'd chased, every body that fell, had led to one place: the new city redevelopment gala, a celebration of the very people who'd orchestrated the chaos. Inside the hotel ballroom, the elite gathered: city officials, developers, investors, and Councilman Richard Coles at the center of it all. Cameras flashed, champagne flowed, and Coles took the stage, smiling for the reporters. "Tonight," he said, "we mark a new era for Los Angeles, one free of crime, free of division, free of fear." But just outside, a black van rolled to a stop. Inside sat a mix of men once sworn enemies, Crips and Bloods, united under a new name: the Coalition. No flags, no colors, no sets. Just one goal: expose the people who'd used their streets as pawns. They weren't here to kill. They were here to reveal. As Coles raised his glass, the lights suddenly went out. Gasps filled the hall. A giant projector flickered to life on the stage screen. Then one by one, files began to appear: Bank transfers, offshore accounts, hidden contracts, bribe payments, all showing millions of dollars laundered through gang violence and redevelopment schemes. The crowd erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Coles froze as his own signature appeared on screen, transferring funds to shell companies linked to Terrence T-Bone Ward. Then came the final slide, a live security feed. The screen showed a warehouse on the city's south side, filled with crates of unregistered weapons, stamped with the same city redevelopment logo. Panic spread. Coles tried to speak, but the microphones went dead. Outside, police sirens wailed, but not for the coalition. For once, they were coming for the suits. Gaines watched from the back of the room as officers stormed in. Coles was dragged out in handcuffs, shouting that he'd be out by morning. Maybe he would be. Corruption ran deep. But the people in the crowd, the media, the nation watching the leaked footage online, they had already made their judgment. For the first time, the story was out of the city's control. The next morning, Gaines drove through the neighborhoods once ruled by fear. The tags had changed. No longer red or blue. No longer Crip or blood. Now the word reclaimed was painted across walls in white. He parked by the ruins of a burned-down liquor store, one of the first blocks to fall years ago. A group of kids was repainting the walls, turning old graffiti into murals of faces lost to the war. One of them looked up at Gaines and said, "They thought we'd kill each other forever. Guess they didn't know who really runs these streets." Gaines smiled faintly. He knew this peace wouldn't last forever. The streets had long memories. But something had changed. For once, the people weren't fighting each other. They were fighting back. Later that week, an anonymous message hit every major news outlet. It contained the same phrase that had started everything. Unite. Only this time, it wasn't written in blood or spray paint. It was signed by the coalition. As the screen faded to black, one line appeared. "This isn't the end of the story, it's the beginning of justice."